What is up, everybody?
I was gonna just sit here like I was froze for a minute,
Like,
just to
like you're
mess
just
with you.
frozen.
Yeah, like that, just for a little bit, just for a little bit. I decided not to. So,
Well, let's warm things up with Timmy, dude.
oh yeah, let's get the song
Here
going.
comes Cryptoholics. We got Bigfoot in the woods. We got aliens in the sky. We got ghosts in the attics. Here comes Cryptoholics.
Even the dog.
Fighting Tupelo.
Oh shit, man! Oh my god! Oh.
I don't know how
I,
he does that. I
I
don't know how
know,
he does
and
that
you know
sound.
what? That's like, how old is that video? And I still laugh every time I watch
I think that's 2018, man.
it. Is it that long?
Yeah,
My goodness.
time flies when you're having fun.
I guess. I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah, yeah, I think it is 2018, summer of 2018. So,
Yeah.
and I still just sit here and smile every time it plays. I don't know. It's just the silliest thing in the world.
So, our guest tonight.
All right.
I learned of Mr. Darrell Denton by joining his Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures group, which is huge, by the way. I think it's, I think, because our group is pretty big, but Darrell's got this huge group, and I think it's awesome because you've got all these people you can bounce stuff off, find out stuff, from different states or all over, really. He's like, was it Sherwin Williams covering the Earth? I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I've seen
The
that. Yeah.
paint. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
that's his group. They're
Okay.
covering the Earth, man.
We're in the earth. All right. We're just covering a small little corner of the.
Hmm. Oh yeah,
Of
we're
the so yeah.
like one of them little paint
We're
samples.
yeah. I was gonna say we're the paint sample. We're the
Paint
paint
sample.
sample of the cryptid world.
Oh God. Well, I
That's
tell you
all.
what, let's bring Darrell on, man, because yeah, I just got to hear some stuff from Darrell, man. How you doing, Darrell?
Hey, good. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Sure. Been looking forward to it. Honored to be here.
All right.
Uh, Watched quite a few of your shows, and they look real good. And I listened to quite a few of them when you first joined the group.
Oh.
But
Oh, okay.
appreciate that.
Yeah. We
Awesome.
we don't really consider it a show, Daryl. It's just a couple of goofballs
Couple of
on.
nudniks.
Yeah, a couple of goofy
Well,
guys on here talking to people, and
I'll,
it's real
I'll,
laid
I'll,
back.
I'll,
So.
I'll, if that's the case, I'll fit in real well. Then we'll
All
be
right,
All
okay.
right.
that'll work.
Yeah.
That'll work.
So, Darrell, when did you start Bigfoot Believers and Other Creatures? When did that come out? When did you?
It's been a year. Mike Patterson and I probably had one of the first Bigfoot groups on Facebook, and that was in, I don't remember exactly what year that was. That was probably 2015 or 16. We had Blue Ridge Cryptos and Blue Ridge Sasquatch and Crypto. And I left his about a year ago and started well, it's been a little over, it's February of 2022. So a little over a year ago, I started my own group.
Wow.
And, it's just been pretty fortunate. I've got a lot of good friends in the Bigfoot and cryptid world, and they kind of joined up with me, and I've been real blessed to have so many good people join, and we've done real well. I think we're the well, I think I'm right on this. We were the fastest and biggest group in Facebook history a few months ago. So,
Oh wow, I believe
and
it.
Yeah.
we're growing about 100 and I think we're averaging about 146 members a day.
Wow.
But
Oh, we lost him.
about 146 members a day, I believe that's correct. But anyway, a lot of good people
Mhm.
in there. Great, just regular members, super moderators, great admin people. Got some super people that's experienced a lot of things and know a lot more about some of the things than I do. But One thing about it, you learn something new every day. When you quit learning, you might as well get out of it. So I learn something every day from somebody that I don't even know sometimes. But it's always good to hear everybody's theories and their own stories. And the good thing about our group is we don't allow any criticism or any ridicule. You know, everybody's open minded, and if you come into the group with that on your mind, you might as well leave because you'll get left. So,
Yeah.
you know, we want everybody to feel comfortable to tell their stories. Back when I had my first encounter in '92, I couldn't tell anybody.
Both our eyes went like that. We lost.
Oh, Darrell's frozen.
He's frozen.
Time.
Frozen. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but
There you go. Yeah. Froze up on us a little
They're
bit.
on to you, Darrell. They're watching you, man. They're on to you.
You're
they may
growing
be. They
fast.
definitely could be, really, but it wouldn't surprise me any.
Mhm.
I got a question about your group. So where are you, like, I guess your members, I was looking at, you have over 23,000 members right now. Are you guys centralized anywhere, or is it just coast to coast?
We got people in 19 countries in our group.
Okay.
You're
everywhere.
We're not really, you know, I'm from Tennessee. That's where I lived all my life. And I live on the coast, close to the Outer Banks, a couple weeks, sometimes 2 to 3 weeks out of a month, because my kids are here with my ex. So I stay here and then I go home for about 10 days. But basically, it's everywhere. I mean, I've got a lot of people in it that are close friends of mine in Tennessee and Kentucky, people I've researched with for quite a few years. But I mean, we got people everywhere, all over the country, United States, and like I said, about 19 other countries. But I think the no criticism thing, we really push that pretty hard. And then we've got some superstars in our group, like Ron Moorhead's in our group, and
Mhm.
I can go all down the line. MK Davis, Lyle Blackburn, Ken Gerhard. I mean, just a lot of big time names, and then regular small researchers like myself, and people that are up and coming. And we got a lot of podcasters in our group too. So they kind of spread the word, and our big thing is we want everybody to be comfortable telling their story. So, and we get a lot of those, and we get some unbelievable pictures of the actual Bigfoot and Dogman and several other things. So, you know, it's a lot of good posts in there. And biggest thing is everybody gets along. That's the best thing about it. We don't have any problems. Very seldom do we have to get anybody kicked out or anything like that.
So this is on my mind so hardcore because I think it was like maybe a year or two ago. We're supposed to go to LBL. I was going to meet up with the Beast guys and the Sisters of the Moon folk, and you know, just great people.
We go to LBL pretty regular.
Yes, you do, sir. And what I want to know is I want to hear the Devil's Backbone story. Oh, did he freeze? They don't want Darrell to talk.
I don't know if it's you or me. You know, I'm on the coast here. Sometimes it does this, but I apologize. But,
Oh, you're fine, man. That's that's just technology, right?
Yeah.
It's a live show, so.
Yeah, we try to go to the LBL, you know, at least once a month, sometimes twice, and we'll stay up there for quite a few nights. Me and usually there's several of us that go, mainly me and Martin Groves and Martin Nunley mainly. But we've had a lot of things happen up there. So some crazy stuff, you know, just a few times with just me and Martin alone, and other times together we'd have a lot of different things around us. We were there, I guess it was about a month ago, and that was one of the strangest nights I've had there for a lot of creatures, and we had a lot of them around us. Matter of fact, we had several creatures looking at us, and it got pretty crazy about 3 o'clock in the morning. We could hear a lot of Dogman howls across the water and on the hill, and it got pretty crazy. It was a little intense there. We're sitting next to a campfire in the middle of nowhere. So, but nothing happened. You know, it kind of died down a little bit as time went on. But we've had some experiences up there. See a lot of orbs, some Bigfoot, and some other creatures. You know, Martin and I seen that dog man last October, and that was probably the strangest thing I've ever seen. But
Was that the Devil's Backbone trip?
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
because that's what he was. So I heard his side, right? And you guys were in his in a truck, looking out
Right.
the window, right?
Well, we had
go ahead.
just stopped. Right. We had been out there for, I guess it had been a couple of days and a night, and we had been way back in there, about as far as you can go. And those roads, if you've been to LBL before, there's roads everywhere, and it goes for, I think there's about 270,000 acres there, and you go back in toward the north end, you're looking at, you know, there's gravel roads to the left, to the right, dirt roads to the left, to the right. There's roads closed. I mean, you can get lost back in there pretty easy, but, you know, he knows the area better than I do, but I've been with him many times in there.
Let's all freeze. There you are.
Well, I don't know if like I said, I don't know if it's me or it may be me on the ocean here. The ocean's in my back door here. So.
Oh yeah, that's a good possibility.
It's a good trade-off.
This has happened with Jessica Jones a while back. I went off 3 or 4 times. Same thing with BMR, Bigfoot Michigan Rob. I lost him several times, but I apologize for the inconvenience there.
Oh, that's okay.
You're fine, buddy.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of weird things there. That particular night, like I was saying, we had just stopped probably 50 feet from that area and pulled down Martin's tailgate, and we had sat on the tailgate, and we were kind of having our dinner late at night. We didn't eat that day much. We were in the woods and looking and checking out things, and found a lot of tracks and went into different areas. But I'd heard something over to the left, and we had just got back in the truck, and we had made a left turn onto this little gravel road back in there, and we're probably just barely moving, maybe 1 mile an hour. I've got my passenger window down. Martin's driving. And I looked over to the right and laying in this, it looked like a ditch because the road sets up probably 4 or 5 foot higher than the ground off to the right. It looked like a ditch, but there was a lot of weeds and sticks and stuff in this ditch. And I could see this creature laying in there, and it was looking right at me. And it had a massive head. I mean, the head was probably about half the size of the windshield. And it had like mane hanging down from it, like a line. And it was kind of a silver gray colored, and it was staring right at me. It looked like it was a cat. You know how a cat looks when it's going to pounce on something. That's the kind of stance it was doing. It was looking right in my face. I was 10, 15 feet from this thing, and the eyes were looked like flashlights. There were tiny glowing eyes like little flashlights, and it was just watching every move that I made as I was looking at it. And I turned to look at Martin to my left, and I said, about the same time as I said as he did, he said, "Did you see that?" I said, "How could I miss it? It's right here next to me." I was thinking the thing was going to jump in the window and get me. And about that time, we had barely went by it, and Martin looked in his rearview mirror, and it didn't actually run behind the truck, but it kind of just glided, he said, behind the truck as he was looking through his rearview mirror. And you could hear it going up the bank, a steep bank to the left of us, and you could hear sticks breaking and everything else as it was going up through there. And about that time, I started getting sick. My legs were tingling, and had kind of a headache, and Martin got real sick. I looked over at him, and he was kind of slumped over to the steering wheel, and I kept saying, "Are you all right?" And he said, "I don't know." And he said, "I can't breathe." And his throat had swelled together, and his tongue had swelled up, and he was having a real difficult time breathing. And I said, "Well, let me get over here and drive, and let's get somewhere where we can." I was thinking try to get him to the hospital or something. It was really that bad at that time, and by the time we went on down the end of that gravel road, he was feeling a little better, but he still was real sick. And we turned off and made it back to the Traceway, probably 10 or 15 miles away, and got in a light. And he got out and walked around a little bit. And he felt a little better, got him some water. And my sickness was nowhere near what his was. But, and it was a kind of a different type of sickness. I've been what they call zapped before by Bigfoot or the forest people, but it was mainly in my stomach and my headache, but this was more in my chest than a headache. And whatever this thing did, it put some kind of terrible smell inside the truck. It smelled like, I can't smell real good because I lost my senses back when I had COVID with my smelling, but Martin can, and he said it smelled like rotten garbage in there. I could smell a little, but not like he could, and I think that was making him sicker. So we rode around with the windows down the rest of the night, and of course headed back toward his place because he was so sick. I was afraid that I was actually afraid he was gonna pass out. But
Wow.
But after he had got back, I think a day or two later, he was sick for almost a week after that. Whatever this thing did, I don't know if it's some type of scent gland they have or what it is. And I've wondered that about Bigfoot over the years. I'm not sure what it is, but this thing had put some kind of coating even on his truck. It was like a film over the truck. And he had went to 2 different car washes and had it buffed out to try to get all that off. And he got most of it off, but there's still a little residue on the front of the hood. But it was very strange. I've never seen anything like this. This thing was so strange looking. It was almost cartoon looking. I know it sounds crazy, but I've really never seen anything like that. It was
like the proportions, in its face and stuff looked very cartoon.
It really did, and it was kind of like I said, a silver gray. The end of the hair on it looked like it was like shining. It was like outlined in light. It's kind of hard to explain, but I've never seen anything like that before. So I don't know. I believe some of those creatures are flesh and blood, and I believe there's a different type that may be interdimensional completely. And I'm not sure if that's not what we had seen, but it was definitely I've never seen anything close like that, and I've seen some pretty crazy stuff in the woods, but that would definitely top it all. So,
wow. So for those of you guys that are watching this right now, Darrell was out at Devil's Backbone with Martin Groves, who's actually a retired sheriff, correct?
Martin is retired sheriff's chief's deputy. Yeah, and Martin and I have been friends for about 41 years, and I was the mayor and alderman and commissioner for almost, I think I was 24 years, but he and I were friends.
He'll be right back.
Yeah, he'll be back.
This is where we could take a commercial.
Yeah.
For Coke Zero.
He's coming in. There he is.
There we go.
There you go.
He and I have been friends for years, and I had my first encounter in '92. Of course, mine was with the Bigfoot. Martin's was, of course, with the Dog Man at the LBL. And me and I were really, we were about the only 2 people I could talk to. Was he and I would talk, but
so both of these guys are like they held positions of, you got a sheriff, you got a mayor.
Yeah. Public exposure. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cross your fingers. Every time I talk about the LBL, this happens. So
I know, that's wild.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Brian.
I was gonna say, we just had one of the viewers ask if it made any noise. I know you said that you could hear it going up through the brush, but there was like no vocalizations or anything like that, right?
No, not at all. No, just a real stare right at me, looking at me like it was watching every move I made. And like I said, the stance it had, I couldn't see its feet because it was down in the brush and everything. Actually, we went back to that place after that a few weeks later, and it's not actually a ditch; it's actually a dry bed creek there.
Oh,
But it's got a lot of foliage around it, and I couldn't see the legs. But yeah, I'm guessing it was about 8 foot long. But the head was what got my attention. The size of it, it was just massive, and it had like mane, like a lion hanging down. So
was it like? Did
very
it look like a
strange looking.
Bigfoot? Did it look like a Bigfoot creature?
It really almost looked like I said.
Like a what? I missed it.
Oh, he'll be back on.
Oh,
This is crazy. This is
it's strange.
wild.
And I know somebody asked what color it was. I think he was saying it was like a silver gray color, right?
I think so. Oh, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, Darrell. They are trying to mute Darrell.
They're out to get him. They are out to get him. I'm
It's
thinking
Walter Enoch's asking.
Yeah, I think this is Walter.
Yeah. Yeah. That's our dude. Man, we cannot. Oh, your mic is muted.
I don't know. I wonder why. Well,
There it is.
there you go.
Maybe when you stay on a little while, it does this sometimes. But
They're trying to silence you, Darrell.
That's it.
I don't know if that's what it is or not.
I'm just messing around.
Sometimes
We
I
gotta
wonder
go
if it's not, but just about every time I talk about the LBL, something happens. Though it's really that's true story.
So Darrell, Martin was talking about how this thing almost like it was laying down and then it kind of came out of like a gray type of mist or something like that. Was it like a
Correct, yeah.
fog or? That's just
It was
wild.
more like I would probably put it more like a mist more than a fog because you could see it, but it was like a rain in front of it. It's hard to explain, but it was like real fine. It wasn't like droplets, but it was
Okay.
really strange looking. It was like it come out of another dimension or something. I don't know how to explain it. Like I said, I've
So it
never
was
seen
like
anything.
it was like contained just to that specific area right there.
But pretty
Yeah,
much so,
pretty much.
yeah.
Man, that is
yeah.
wild, man.
That's
Yeah.
weird.
There was, I like I said, I don't recall ever seeing anything even close to that in my time in the woods or LBL either. I've seen another dog man. I seen that one, and this particular incident happened in October of 22, just 5 or 6 months ago, with Martin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
But I'd seen another one in October of 21, but it was nothing like that. That was the first one I'd ever seen as far as a dog man goes. And it was nothing like this one. The one I'd seen then was in Tazewell County, Virginia. That one was nothing like what I thought it would be. But I had run into a guy that wanted me to. I was actually in a market where I go in the morning up there and have coffee. And we sat around this table with some older guys, some farmers, and this gentleman came in and he said, the guy who owns this market is an Indian gentleman, and it's hard to understand his English sometimes. And this guy said to come in with his son, and he said, "Do you know anybody that knows anything about creatures?" And I was sitting at the end of this table, and I just heard him say that. And I kind of looked up toward him, and the guy who owns the market looked at me, and I said, "Well, what kind of creature are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, I don't know what it is." And I said, "Well, what do you think it is? Have you seen it?" He said, "No, but it's killed all my aunt's goats, and we don't know what it is." But I said, "Well, all the goats?" He said it killed them. How did it kill them? And he went into detail on what it had done to them. And he asked me if I would come out there. And of course, the older guys sitting at the table with me, they don't fool with any of that kind of stuff. And they said, we're going out there and see what he's got. And he lived about an hour and a half from this location. And I got his address and drove out there a couple days later. And I lost my GPS because it was in the middle of nowhere. And I actually had to go back about 10 miles and call him, and he met me at a spot out there, and I followed him to his house and crossed this creek and went up to the left to the farm where it was at. And I got out, and he walked me over, and he lived with his great aunt. Him and his son did, and his son was, I don't know, 8 or 10 years old, and he walked me over to the actual little barn that the goats had been in, and the goats weren't there. They had already removed them, but I could see the tracks, and I knew immediately that what it was by the track, but knew it wasn't a Bigfoot. And he asked me what it was, and I said, well, I'm not sure, but it's some type of dog, probably a large dog. I didn't want to scare the man to death. And he said, well, we've had problems with this thing for over a year now. And he said, do you mind looking around and see if you can find it or where it went or where it's at? And I said, well, I might be able to look around a little bit. So he guided me to a spot on his farm to cross this creek. When you come into his drive, you have to cross an actual creek. It's not a bridge. It's a shallow creek, maybe a foot deep. You just drive across it, then you come up on a rise. Well, if you make a right instead of a left going back to his house, you go up on a rise up on top of a hill that overlooks a field he has. The field's probably 200 or 300 yards, maybe the field is. It's fenced where he had his goats. He said, if you'll sit up on the top up there, I think it's coming out of those woods up there. And I went out there and parked, and I didn't see anything. And I kept coming back for probably about 10 days. I would come back and sit up there in the evening looking for it and didn't see anything. And I had my binoculars with me, and of course I had a weapon, and waited around, still didn't see anything. And I just about given up on seeing it. And I think it was probably about the 14th time I think I'd been out there. It was right before dark. In the corner of the far end of the field, the left corner, I'd seen a black figure come out of the woods. And when it came out of the woods, it crossed a fence, and it came across this field that I was overlooking this field. I was actually sitting in my truck with my binoculars, and it ran across this field, had sagegrass in it, and you could see the sagegrass wasn't completely, it had spots that was clear in it, but when it would break out of the sagegrass, I could see it, and it had, the thing that got my attention about it is it didn't run like a dog, it galloped like a horse. And it wasn't huge. It was not a huge animal, but I thought at first it was just a big dog, and the further I watched it, it ran all the way across to the corner of the field, to the right front corner of the field where the fence met the woods. And I was looking over at it. And when it got to the corner of the field, there was a barbed wire fence there. It stood up and it looked back toward me, stood up on two legs and looked back toward me. Didn't see me, but looked in my direction. And I was watching it. Then it just stepped across the fence and walked into the woods. But it wasn't that big. It was maybe 6 foot tall. It was solid black. But it did stand on two legs, and you could tell it was like, I've heard the hawk type legs, but that was the first one I'd seen. I thought it would have been a lot bigger than that, but I'm sure some of them are juvenile or maybe younger ones. Mm-hmm. Maybe this one was full grown. I have no idea. But
what size was that track? What size was the track, Darrell?
The track was, if I remember right, it was 12 inches long and about 4 inches at the widest. It was a more narrow long track.
Holy smokes!
But that's with the hock, the back of the
Mhm.
leg, the coming off of it. And I think I still have some pictures of it. I had a lot of pictures, and my phone got hacked back in October, and I lost some of them. But it was it was not nearly as big as I thought a dog man would be. I always hear they're 8 foot tall or 10
Mhm.
foot tall, and you hear all this stuff, but it was not really that big of an animal.
Wow.
I think a lot of
But
people get heights and stuff wrong though when they see stuff like that. You know, I think I don't know, maybe a little bit of fear and just the fact that a lot of people aren't good at judging distance and height and stuff like that. So I think when I hear people say, "Oh man, this thing had to be 12 foot tall," I always think, "Man, was it really?" You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, I agree with
it,
that. Yeah,
yeah,
a lot of
it's
people get
hard.
a lot of people get excited too, and they kind
Yeah.
of think it's bigger than it is. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
there
And I
was
don't ever think it's people making it up or anything like that. I just think that when you see it for that split second, and I mean, it's hard sometimes for people to see stuff like that. So
there was
Well, there.
actually a limb down there next to the tree that it crossed over next to, and I actually measured that limb the next.
there you go.
Yeah.
Oh, he froze up on it. But yeah, I mean, that's like the best way if you got a solid marker, that you
Something to scale. Yeah.
yeah, something you can go off of, like a barbed wire fence. Barbed wire fence is going to be a barbed wire fence height, so you can go out there and you can measure that barbed wire fence. You know
Right.
how tall that thing is. So, but like I see people like, oh, it was cutting across the middle of the field. It looked to be 14 foot tall, and I'm like, there's no reference there. It's
Kandahar
hard.
giant, man. The
Yeah,
Kandahar giants come
he
to
could have been
America.
5 foot tall, or maybe not five,
Yeah.
it could have been 7, but.
The strange thing about that story was, like I said, I went back and I actually brought my gun and I brought I brought my cell with me because I actually got out of my truck and it was about 3 days later because it was almost dark when I seen this creature,
Oh
and
yeah.
I went down there and walked that area and crossed the fence where it crossed and went in there, and there was a big bluff in there, and there was a lot of bones around it, and you could see where something was going up under this bluff. It was kind of like a dugout area up under it, and you could see some tracks going into it. And I walked around it and looked and checked it out, and I didn't see the creature, but it may not have been the spot it went into, but it looked like something had been going up under that bluff. It was a pretty good sized hole that had been dug out up under there. And funny thing about it was, I took a buddy of mine out there a couple days later, and as I crossed the creek to go up in there, we were going to walk that whole area and see if we could find it. And when I crossed the creek, there was a game warden sitting there. And I pulled up across the creek, and he stopped me and he said, "What are you doing up in here?" And I told him, I said, "Just doing some scouting." He said, "What are you scouting?" And I said, "Well, I have the permission from the farmer here to the left that he said I could come up here and just do some scouting." And he said, "Do you have any weapons?" And I told him I did. And I said, "I'm not hunting deer. I'm just doing some scouting." And he said, "Do you have a permission slip?" And I said, "No, I don't, but I have permission from the gentleman who lives here with his aunt." He actually made me go with him to the house, and he told him that I had permission.
Wow.
And we went back, and he asked me a few more questions, wanted to know why I had a Tennessee license and I was in Virginia, and I told him the whole story. And he told me, he said, "Let me just tell you this." He said, "We've had some reports from some other farmers around here that some of their livestock had been killed, and there's something out here killing it, and we don't know exactly what it is, but I would advise you not to be walking back up in there." And I said, "Okay, I appreciate it." And he drove off, and we looked around again, and we went back another time or two. I never did see it again. So I don't know if they had killed it or had run off or changed locations or what. But
Game warden.
Game
He was
warden.
waiting. He was waiting.
Yeah, as soon as you would have told me not to go back up in there, I'd have been like, "Oh, we got to go back up in there."
Oh, that means I have to go in there 10 times
Yeah.
more times.
That means I got to go right now. Yeah. So
Well, guys, it may be a long show if this thing keeps kicking off on me here.
Oh, that's okay, man.
we ain't busy. we ain't doing anything.
I think we have a Pat Turner, man. That's our dude. He does Squatch Talk. I think he has some questions about LBL. So Pat, if you have a question, just go ahead. And while Pat's doing that, tell us about your first encounter in the 90s.
My first encounter was absolutely changed my life. Was November 6th of 1992. I was actually on my grandfather's property in Cannon County, Tennessee. And, I'd hunted up there all my life. Deer hunted, rabbit, squirrel, any kind of game. My grandfather had a pretty good sized farm. And I also had permission with the adjoining farms to hunt on that and on those also. But my grandfather was 92 years old at that time, but he was in unbelievable health and lived by himself out in the middle of nowhere. And I actually lived with him till I was in the first grade, pretty much, because my mom and dad lived there at that time, and they drove to Nashville and stayed during the week and come home on the weekends. But my grandfather and I were real close, and every year opening.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
There you go.
Go ahead,
There we go again. Sorry about this, fellas.
Right.
But anyway, every week for about 4 or 5 years there, we had been going to my grandfather's, me and 3 of my buddies, Cody, Jason, and another buddy of mine, Scott. And we would go up there opening week of black powder, muzzleloader, and we would hunt that whole week and go home. And we always killed deer up there every year. Great place to hunt. And we already had stands built, plus we had carrying stands too. And I'd bring my camper and we'd park it next to my grandfather's barn, and we had electricity there, and bring 4-wheelers, and we had it set up pretty good. We'd have a great time up there. But this particular year, I'd asked my grandfather on his, he had a old farmhouse with a tin roof, and I asked him, I said, well, I want to go for a trophy this year. Tell me the best place to go. And he pointed over behind his back porch there. So you see that third hill? And I said, yeah. He goes, it's a good walk in there, but that'd be the place to go if you want a trophy. And I'd never been that far back in there. I'd hunted the first hollow or whatever plenty of times, but never that far. But so I got my gear, and it was the day before opening day, and my buddies had already hit it out, and they were getting their places set up in a different direction. And I went on over there, and it was, you have to go through my grandfather's back field, and there's a gate, and then you go through that to a big sage field. It's about 200 yards wide where his cows were, and got to a barbed wire fence, and you crossed it, and you go up this big hill. And it was, when I say big hill, it's steep, maybe 45-degree hill. And you go up that thing, climb in over it, and you go down the bottom. And anyway, there's 3 of those you go through, and there's a couple old barbed wire fences in between where there hadn't been any cattle in years. And time I got over the third hill and down to the bottom, he said, when you get to the bottom of that third hill, you'll see a creek, and go to the left of it, and you'll see an old grist mill, what's left of it, and you'll see the house I was born in. It's fallen in, but you'll see the tin roof to the left. And I'd been back in there years before in a vehicle to his old place, but never by the woods. And I got over the hill, and I seen what he was talking about to the left. Back in the woods, you could barely see what was left of the roof of his old house. And on the left side of the creek, I found it's about a 45-degree angle coming down this hill. So when you go up the hill, I went up the hill a little ways, and I found a tree that looked good and I could get a good view. I put my tree stand around it, and it's a climbing stand. And I got it all set up and even climbed up it and cut a few limbs off and got everything ready for the next day. And I had carried a drag rag with me. I guess if you deer hunt, you know what a drag rag is. You put it on your boot and it kind of covers the smell when you go in the woods. And I take that off my boot and I crossed the creek that was in front of me and I walked up on this little game trail and I looked around in that area pretty good and I seen some rubs and scrapes for some buck deer been coming in there. Good signs, and it was right on a game trail and kind of made a little bit to the right and I found a tree limb that I could jump up, and I'm 6'5", so I could jump up and I grabbed the tree limb and put the drag rag on it and let it go. And it was probably, 10 feet off the ground when the limb went back up. And that kind of lets the smell from that rag go down through that hollow and hopefully draw them in. And did all that and crossed back across the creek and went on back to my granddad's house and went to the camper and me and my buddies grilled out and had a good time. I told my granddad, I said, when you get up, come down and knock on the camper and get me up. And he usually got up about 4:30 in the morning and he came down the next morning and got me up and I headed that way. And when I went through the gate behind his house that goes into the field, right as I crossed the first barbed wire fence and I started going up that hill, I heard what it sounded like something walking to the left of me. And I immediately thought, well, that sounds like a person walking. And I shined my flashlight, but I didn't see anything. Excuse me. I didn't see anything. And went on up and crossed that hill and got on down to the second hill. And I could still hear something walking. And it sounded like when I stopped, it would stop. And it was to my left. And I got a little nervous thinking, well, somebody's in here hunting. And I knew it wouldn't be one of my buddies because they were in a different direction. And I knew there wouldn't be hunting in there because this is way out in the middle of nowhere. And there's really nobody in that area that hunts that much. So by the time I got down over the third hill down to the bottom, I found the creek and I kind of walked around the edge of the creek till I found my tree stand in the dark because I wasn't real familiar with this area anyway. I'd never been back in there. And I could still hear something walking up on top of the hill kind of to my left, but it would stop and then it would walk a little bit and then it would stop. And I'm thinking the whole time, this is kind of strange and somebody's in here. I didn't know what it was for sure. I knew it wasn't a cow or anything because there wasn't any cattle in there. So by this time it was, it was a good hour walk over there. And by the time I got in my stand, it was probably by that time, 7 o'clock in the morning time I got up in it and got set up. And I had it's got like a little, awning thing you pull down and it's got a camo cover that covers your feet and I pulled it up to my face and I always wore that blackout under my eyes and I got set up and it was real quiet and I got everything ready and my gun was leaning against the bar in front of me and it was real quiet that morning. I didn't hear much of anything and at first and then the closer it got to daylight, I started hearing a few regular animals like squirrels and stuff running around, but I didn't hear whatever I heard to the left anymore. But as it got daylight, it was real foggy that morning. And I remember the fog coming off the creek, and I could see the creek, but it was a little foggy across the bank on the other side too, where the drag rag was and the game trail. And over to the left of me, there was a ravine between me and a big cane field. And there was like that real tall, thick green cane that grows on the river bank, on the creek bank. And it went for a long ways down that bank. And it was real tall, 12, 15 foot tall. And it was real thick in there. You couldn't see in it. But I've been sitting there for a little bit. And right after it got daylight, the fog started clearing a little bit, and it was a bright sunny morning, and it was somewhere close to probably 7:45 or something when to the left of me, I seen 3 deer walk out somewhere on the other side of that cane. And they walked through the creek and they walked up on the bank to the other side of the creek and onto that game trail. And it was a bigger doe and 2 smaller doe. And all 3.
They got him.
Here we go again.
All right.
Sorry about the problem, fellas.
Oh,
That's
you're
okay, man. Yeah, it really is. It's fine.
So anyway, the deer crossed the creek and they walked on the game trail, and they were just kind of milling around over in that area like deer do, eating some acorns and just had their nose down to the ground just like deer. I watched them for a good while, probably 30 minutes or so, and they were just acting like normal deer, and which was a good sign. At least I seen deer. So usually when you have doe, there's going to be a buck somewhere, and with all the signs I'd seen, and all of a sudden the big deer was straight ahead of me, and there was one deer on the other side of it and one deer kind of behind it. Their ears went up, and the larger deer was looking toward the cane thicket, and her ears, and they were just froze. They were staring right at the cane thicket area, and like they had seen something. And I thought, well, here comes the buck. That's what was in my mind, you know. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the lead deer stuck her nose up and took her right foot and stomped a few times, looking that way. And then she made a real loud blowing noise like a deer does. I'm sure y'all have heard a deer blow like that. And when it did that, she turned and ran to the right across in front of me to my right. And like somebody had shot at them, all 3 of them took off running like they were scared to death. And I'm thinking, what has happened here? I didn't really know what to think, because normally deer don't do that unless somebody has fired at them or something's after them. But I didn't know what to think. And a few minutes went by, and then out of this big cane thicket, I could see the cane moving in the middle. It was moving, swaying, and I could see it all moving in there like something was coming through there. And I thought, well, this is a big deer, because it took something big to move the cane like this. And then this creature stepped out, and it stepped out. It took one step and jumped across the creek. Now, the creek's not real wide. It's 10 foot, probably wide, but it runs all year round. It's not a real wide creek in that particular spot, but it jumped clean across that and landed on that game trail. And by this time, when I was just in shock, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I thought, what is that? Because I'd heard of Bigfoot and everything else, growing up, but I didn't think there was any of them in my area. I thought they were all up in the far west, Washington or Oregon or British Columbia or that area. But if they existed, I didn't even know if they were real or not. But this thing walked down the game trail. It stopped and faced me, looked right at me, showed me its teeth. And by this time, I was so scared. I didn't know I had that kind of fear in me. But I don't get scared real easy. But I'd never seen anything like this. And it was just looking at me, staring right at me, gritting its teeth at me. And then it growled, a low grumbling like growl. And then it turns a little bit to the right and walks over under that tree limb, reaches up and grabs that drag rag, pulls it down and smells of it, and then it just rips the whole tree limb out of the tree. Now, this wasn't a massive tree limb. It was probably, 2 or 3, 4 inches at the diameter where it met.
Dang, dude, this is intense.
Oh no, I was gonna say it's just getting good. I was like, oh man.
The attention to detail Darrell has is phenomenal.
There you are.
Well, it may be a long show tonight, fellas, but anyway, they'd pull this tree limb out of the tree and just stood on the ground, walked right back to where it was at and stared at me again. And I'm thinking, this thing's going to come across here and kill me. And I had one shot. I had that 50 caliber muzzle loader, and I had my hand on it, and I'm thinking, if I shoot this thing and don't kill it, it's going to get me for sure. And I was practically couldn't hardly even breathe. I was so scared. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was unbelievable, the feeling I had at that time. And then it let out this scream. I call it a scream. I've still never heard a sound like that before. Of all the tapes I've heard, even Sierra Sounds, all the tapes I've heard that people have put on podcasts and everything else, and even in the group, it was so loud and it echoed down that hollow. And I thought, well, this is it. This thing's coming across the creek and it's going to pull me out of this tree. And it just looked at me for a second. And I had one of those old Timex Iron Man watches on. I remember pushing the button when I seen it coming out, and it was 8:23 in the morning. And after it screamed, it looked at me, then it just turned around and walked straight back into the brush. And I was practically...
He's lost for words.
Yeah, I'm
No, I'm just kidding. This is great. So intense.
there you
I don't know what's causing it, fellas. I really don't.
are. You're good.
But anyway, I watched it walk away. It walked back into the brush, and I watched it till it completely went out of sight. And I was so scared, I didn't really know what to do. I knew I wasn't going to take 10 or 15 minutes to climb down that stand with a climber and a tree stand. So I lowered the bar in front of me, and I jumped out of this tree stand. I was probably 25 feet up. And when I had my gun in my hand over my head, and when I landed in the leaves, I slid all the way down into the creek. And I jumped up out of the creek and looked back and took off running to the right up the bank around the side of that hill. And I ran probably about as fast as I've ever ran over the top of that first hill. And when I got over the first hill, looked back, did not see it. And I can still feel chills from that today. But when I got almost up to the top of the second hill, I looked back, and that thing was on top of the first hill looking at me.
Oh, he was just making sure, wasn't he?
I don't know if it was the same one or not, but there was one standing there looking at me. And so I ran on top of that hill, and by the time I went down to the bottom of that one, I had to jump across a little barbed wire fence, and I got to the last top of the hill, and I was running so fast down the last hill, I looked back several times and didn't see it. And there was that barbed wire fence I had to cross to get to my grandfather's field there. And I was running so fast, I jumped the fence, and it caught the bottom of my pants leg and just ripped my pants all the way up past my knee and tore a big gash in my leg. But I just kept running. And I ran all the way across that sage field to my grandfather's gate and opened the gate and looked back and did not see it, and locked the gate and went straight into my grandfather's, onto his porch through his screen door into his house, and slammed the door and looked out the window and didn't see it anywhere. And I went through the kitchen there to the right, and I went into the living area where my grandfather was sitting. He had this big pot-bellied stove in the middle of his staging area there, and I went over and sat behind it in the corner. And my grandfather was sitting there in his rocking chair, and he never called me by my name, and he always called me boy. And he said, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" And I said, "I don't know, Granddaddy. I seen a monster in the woods." And he said, a monster? And I said, yeah, I've seen a monster in the woods. I've never seen anything like that. He goes, well, what did it look like? And I told him, and he's kind of sat there for a second. He looked at me and he said, oh, you seen the woodburger? I said, a woodburger? What is a woodburger? And he said, oh, that's what the old people call them. And my granddad called the old people, you know, his ancestors and his family. And he said, they call them the woodburger. He said, I've seen 4 of them in my lifetime. He goes, they don't bother you. They just don't like you in their territory. And he said, they wanted you out of its territory. You probably messed up its hunt. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me these things were here? And he said, well, you've been hunting here and spending the night in the hayloft and everything else all these years with your friends. And he said, if I'd have told you, you wouldn't have had the fun you had all these years. And he said, I just thought it'd be best not to tell you. And he said, your grandma used to tell you better get in the house at dark because the boogeyman would get you. Well, that's the woodburger. And I said, well, I didn't know anything about a woodburger and never even heard of it. And he said, oh, yeah, they've been around here all my life. And he goes, I'll be working in the field. I'll look up and I'll see one of them. He said, they don't bother you. He said, in the wintertime, they come to the hen house out here. And my grandfather had a big old chicken house out to the left of his house there. And it was made out of those old logs that had been there for no telling how long. And he said, they'll come and get 2 or 3 chickens in the winter. And they'll leave a little pile of sticks and rocks like they're paying for it. And I said,
Wow.
I wish I'd have known about the woodburger. I would have. He says, you sure? He said, boy, you look like you're white, like you've seen a ghost. I said, I feel like I have seen a ghost. And I was a nervous wreck that whole day. I'd get up, look out the window, and I'd go look out the back door, and you know, it was pretty nerve-wracking. But
oh my gosh,
it was.
And well,
it
how
was
old
like
were you?
nothing to him, you know. But he never mentioned them to me till that day. But there was.
dude, that's an awesome. Oh my gosh.
I was hoping he was going to get into his grandpa because I was like, I got to ask what grandpa said when he.
Yeah, what did grandpa say? Grandpa's like, oh yeah, those guys.
Yeah.
Well, we may have to do a part 3 or something here.
Hey, Darrell, how old were you on that day?
I was in my 20s.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how old I was, but you know, my buddies, I sat in there on the couch next to my granddad for probably 3 or 4 hours, nervous wreck, still hadn't gotten over it. And my buddies came back to the camper out there, and then one of them had a deer and they had it in the tree skinning it. And I went out there and started talking to them, and they said, what's wrong with you? And I said, nothing. And they said, I said, well, y'all got one. And they started telling me about one of them shot at one and missed it. And I said, you guys, as long as we've been hunting up here, y'all ain't never seen anything in the woods, have you? And I'll never forget, Scott looked at me and says, what are you talking about? I said, something that looked kind of maybe like a Bigfoot. And they all started laughing. They go, you had too much to drink last night. And I said, no, I didn't have anything to drink. And I didn't say anything else about it. I just let it go. But I didn't hunt anymore. I stayed in the house with my granddad the rest of the week. And they were in the camper, and I'd stay out there with them till it was time to go to sleep, and I'd go back and stay in the house with him. But
oh wow,
my hunt was over for that trip. Matter of fact, that was the last time I hunted for probably about 7 years. So
wow,
it was.
So I was going to ask you a couple of details about it, if you recollect or not. But as far as hair color,
It's solid black.
Solid black. Okay.
Solid
And
black.
did you notice any skin around the eyes or mouth?
Yeah, the skin on it looked like black leather is what it looked like. You know, I actually went. Of course, in that time, I didn't have no way to look up the internet or nothing. I didn't know how to do any of that. But when I got home, I actually went back to the library where I lived at, and I looked through some books for a couple of weeks, and I finally found a picture that looked like it, and it was actually called the number 2 woodburger. It looked just like it, except the eyes weren't red; they were black. The eyes in this
Ooh.
picture were red. These were black. But
Whoa.
Did
but
you
it
notice
was
any white around the eyes?
it did have white around the eye. Yeah, it was mostly black. I wasn't that far from this creature. I was, at a 45-degree angle. I was kind of looking over it, but I might have been, I'm guessing 70 feet from it, maybe. But it was the ugliest, meanest looking thing I'd ever seen. But I've seen other Bigfoot since then, but I've never seen anything like that. Uh, it was just really mean looking. If you look up if you look up, I think I actually seen it. Charlie Raymond, my buddy, he and I were talking about it a few years ago, and I believe that he told me where to find it. I looked into something called Reddit or something, looked it up, and there was one in there called the number 2 wood bug, and it looked like it. Looked like it's pretty similar to the same picture I'd seen.
Huh. Let's check that out real quick.
But it was meanest looking thing I ever seen. It looked like his face was kind of distorted. It was just mean looking. Nothing like the patty or nothing like that. Not a face or head like that at all.
Was it the cone type head?
No,
No.
not at all. More of a human type head.
Really? Okay.
And it was, like I said, it was all black, and the face looked like black leather is what it looked like.
Yeah, that's why
It
I
had
was.
hair on its face, under its eyes here, but not right under its eye. Right under its eye was more leather-looking skin. But
That's why I was asking about the face, because that was the thing on my encounter that I saw, and it was the black, like you said, leather-like skin.
yeah,
That's why I was, and then I couldn't see any white around the eyes for mine.
Something like this, a little bit ish.
no, nothing like that at all. No, it didn't have that much hair, and it had a meaner-looking face. I've got a picture of it myself on my cell, but of what it looked like, similar to that. But I never seen. I've really never. The only picture I've seen that looked like it was the number 2 woodburger, and I think it's called Reddit, Reditt. I believe is how it's spelled. And I think Charlie had told me about that because Charlie, he had camped at our spot we had in 2018 and 19 with us a few times. But it was like I said, I've seen some Bigfoot since then, but I've never seen one like that. I've seen a couple of different types, maybe 3 different types, but nothing again that's ever looked like that thing did. I hope I never see another one like it.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man.
That
was a very intense encounter. I will say that.
Yeah, great story, great detail too.
It kept me out of the woods for about 7 years. I can tell you that. So I didn't even hunt anymore. We'd go hunting up there every year, but I'd stay in the house with my granddad and they'd go hunt. But didn't hunt anymore. It took me a long time to get over it. I actually had nightmares for a long time about it.
Wow.
Especially the first 3 or 4 months. It was really rough. But anyway, it's just, everybody takes it differently. But it was definitely a life-changing experience. I believed in Bigfoot all of a sudden. There was no doubt about that.
Oh, yeah. Can't deny that one, can you?
Yeah, you just don't think
wild.
things like that live in the woods. You really don't. You're not taught to believe that. So, it's just a movie or a myth, but myths do come true, though, because there's a lot of things out in the woods that I've found out since then.
Okay, so that is great because I have one more question. I want to know, because I have one that stays in my backyard and I feed it all the time. And I've named him, and we're kind of friends. I have a possum back there. I need to hear about this possum.
You talking about the possum that turned the light bulb possum? That one?
I want to hear about the possum.
Well, we were in Cheatham County, Tennessee, at a spot that we had there. That was in 2008. Let's see, that was 2018 to about the middle of 2020, and we still go there. Matter of fact, one of my research partners that there in Tennessee, Billy Howell, him and Chester Smith still go there, and they seen two Bigfoot a couple weeks ago there in our spot, and then they black ones, and then they also seen a brown one. I've never seen a brown one there, but they did. That the night about the possum is when Billy Howell and I were in there. It was after midnight, and he was to the left of me about 50 yards, and I was up on closer to the top of the hill in our gifting spot, close to our gifting spot. Gifting spot's probably 50 feet from us, in front of us, and they've been coming in there getting food, and there was a juvenile and a female that were pretty friendly there. But that particular night that we were there, the bigger ones had seemed to come out at night there. And I had never seen one of the big ones. Billy had seen one that was about 12 foot tall, but I had never seen it. And we had went in there that night, and like I said, I was to the right and he was to the left. And up on this hill in front of me, probably 100 yards in front of me through the woods, I seen what looked like a light bulb coming down through the woods. And it was really strange. It was on the ground, and it was coming real slow on the ground. It was so bright like a light bulb. And I watched it come down, and it went through a ravine. I lost it, and then it come up out of the ravine. I seen it again, and it was walking right toward me. And I was behind a big tree that had forks, and I was looking through the forks of this tree, and I was sitting in a chair behind it. And this thing was walking right toward me, and it kept coming closer and closer. And I thought, well, this thing's going to walk right up to me. And Billy was to the left, and I looked over at him, and I didn't know what this was because it was moving real slow, and it was so bright on the ground. And it got about 3 feet from me, and I pulled out my 45 out of my holster. And I was ready to shoot whatever it was because it was almost to the tree. And about that time, Billy hit the big spotlight and shined it on it. And when he shined it on it, it turned into a possum. It looked right at me, and it hissed, opened its mouth, and then it turned around in a possum form, and we could see it walk back to where it came from. And it weirded me out. I said, I don't know what the heck that was. It turned into a possum, and then it went back to the same area that it came from. And maybe 30 minutes later, these two huge red orbs, about the size of beach balls, came out of the sky down through the trees, and they were hovering about a foot off the ground right to where that thing had went to. And we sat and watched these things. They pulsated, pink, orange, and green. They were about the size of beach balls. Like I said, about a foot off the ground. And we watched them for about 30, 40 minutes. And then they started going down the hill together real slow toward the gifting spot. And about that time, all of our alarms went off. Our trucks were parked about 200 yards behind us at the driveway of a friend of ours' house, David. He's the one that called us down there because his girlfriend was scared to death there. These things were looking through the window at her at night. And we'd been going in there for a good while at that time, and they had really calmed down because we were gifting them and trying to befriend them. And she calls Billy's cell phone, and we take off. Right, she said they're back at the house, and we went running back there. And I didn't even realize it, but by the time I got back to the vehicles, my alarm was going off in my truck. Billy's alarm was going off in his truck, and David, who lived there, his big Ford Dually was parked behind us. He had just came home and parked his truck there. His alarm was going off. All three of these alarms were wide open. And we couldn't get them to shut off. We did everything we could to get them to shut off. We put the keys in them, everything. They wouldn't stop. They probably went off for 45 minutes before they finally quit. My watch had stopped at 12:48. My cell phone was dead. His cell phone was dead. I started getting sick. He got sick. That was the first time that I'd ever got what they called, I guess, zapped. I don't know if it was from the orbs or what it was from, but I had to lay down in my truck and he laid down in his, and we got to feeling better after a couple of hours. But we lost our electronics and his FLIR went dead, and the alarms went off for some reason. We don't know how that happened. The next morning, when we all three, and David's a good sized guy, he's bigger than me, we all pushed those vehicles as hard as we could. We couldn't get the alarms to go off. And on the back of his pickup truck tailgate, I've got big hands, but there was a handprint on the back of his tailgate that was about twice the size of mine.
Whoa.
In the dust on the tailgate. So I guess the Bigfoot set it off somehow, but we didn't even see a Bigfoot that night. All we seen was those orbs. But that's the possum story. So I don't know how a ball of light turned into a possum, but it did.
Oh man, I'm gonna catch Perry now. That's my possum's name. His name's Perry.
See if you can turn into a ball of light.
That
Well, I
is
hope he doesn't turn
crazy.
into a ball of light.
Darrell, I don't even know how you even processed that right there. That would have just that's wild. Oh my gosh.
It's still strange today. I mean, I was weirded out that night too. We actually we couldn't figure it out what had happened either, why that thing had turned into a possum, but it did.
It's awesome.
Strangest thing I've ever seen. It even opened its mouth and hissed at me.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
It almost got shot, I can tell you that.
I think there's a lot of guys that have drawn down on a possum. We can ask Dustin Clark. Dustin Clark to tell you about the time.
I guess it's always open season in Tennessee on possums, so
yeah.
all right. But I didn't want to kill it. I just didn't know what it was. But
yeah.
Anyway, it is a pretty funny story. I know a lot of people think that's crazy, but it actually happened. But
I think it's awesome. I love it.
It's wild.
I love it. Wow.
We've had some crazy things to happen down there. It's a real good spot that we've got down there. Just in the last few weeks, the sheriff's department was called into that same area, the road next to it, with a huge dog man crossed it, and the sheriff's deputy got so scared that he called for backup. And they said there was 7 or 8 patrol cars up there on that road. So I've never seen a dog man down there, but Billy and them were down there last week and found a lot of dog man tracks.
That is awesome.
But it's a weird area down there.
Shane's got audio, but his video is froze. So unless he's playing.
Sorry about kicking off so many times on you guys. I don't know if it's my internet or not.
No.
Wait, am I moving now?
No, you're not moving a bit, buddy.
Yeah, you're
moving. That's too bad. You should see what I'm doing.
yeah, you're frozen, and you're frozen a very funny spot too. Let's just say that. So.
Well, that's pretty normal for me, I guess.
Yeah, you got this goofy look on your face.
So, that's like always.
Yeah. All right, though. The audio is great. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you got to sacrifice one for the other.
Probably got a froze look. Anybody hear about a possum? The light bulb turned into a possum. It's pretty.
My possum might be in my backyard right now.
Your possum is messing with your internet there, Shane. He's got that bright light on you. So Perry's up to no good. So.
Oh, Perry. That's ridiculous.
Well, Darrell, we appreciate you coming on. I mean.
I appreciate you having me. I enjoyed it. I appreciate it very much.
Can you guys see this?
There we go. I was hoping you was gonna pull that up there.
So this is Darrell's group, guys. I joined it. I'm a proud member.
I joined today.
I appreciate it. Thank y'all. I appreciate y'all being members. And actually, Shane's one of my experts, and I appreciate you being in there, and I appreciate you joining today too. I really do. So
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Love it, man. Love it. Love what you're doing, man. You guys are doing great stuff. It's just awesome.
well, you're welcome to post any of your videos on there you like to.
Okay.
We appreciate that. So
Yeah.
Shane and I are actually headed out this weekend, right, Shane?
Yeah. We are headed to Falk, Arkansas. So
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
They're having it down there this weekend, I guess. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think Lyle Blackburn had posted that in my group.
Yeah.
yeah.
We're not going to attend the convention.
No, not this year. This year, I want to get boots on the ground and go check out, the old Boggy Creek monster stomping area,
Yep.
That's a real good area down there. Real good area.
Man, it looks wild out there. It's all
Cool
swampy.
spot, so.
Yeah, I think they're still having regular sightings down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is. I just got audio not too long ago, about 3 weeks ago, and it was pretty impressive.
I'm actually speaking at a convention there at Devil's Den State Park in October. There's a Bigfoot convention, and you ought to come down and check that out.
That would be fun.
You know what day it is?
I don't know exact date yet, but Tom T and Carlito, they know all about it, and I was invited by them to speak at that convention. But it's Devil's Den State Park. I think it's the first or second week of October. I don't know exact date yet, but
if it's the second week, I probably can make it. The first weekend of October, I'm actually speaking at one at here in Oklahoma at our Honubby conference.
Okay, I was in Oklahoma this time last month. I went up to 20 miles north of Broken Bow.
Yeah, that's our stomping ground.
Man, we love it out there.
That's where I had my sighting, is right there just south of Smithville, Oklahoma.
Okay, well, you're real close to where I was at. I went up there to my buddies that live there. I take my horse and we go 13 miles back in there at a place they call Bigfoot Mountain. And we take horseback and 2 pack mules and go back in there for a week. But I didn't get to go. We got up there and the river, it rained for like 4 days and 4 nights. And we sat in the bunkhouse for those 3 or 4 nights as it poured down rain. And the river was so swollen we couldn't get across it. It was pretty swift. But
you going over Mountain Fork River?
Yeah, I think that's the name of it.
Yeah. Right there. Shane, he's probably going in at the Narrows where we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Jeremy and Nate, I've been on a couple of expeditions with them in Oklahoma and Arkansas, and we try to get together and take horseback in there and stay a week. And we have a lot of real good sightings in there. Matter of fact, they know the area real good, and they've got a couple of those creatures that are pretty friendly with them, I'm told.
Are you on the east side of Highway 259?
Man, I don't know that area well enough to tell you where I'm at. I just know how to get there.
If you're crossing Mountain Fork and you're 20 miles north of there, I want to say you're in our area. Exactly.
Or where we go. Yeah, I love it over there.
And that's where I had my visual. Darrell, 2018, I spent, what I say, Shane, 62 nights there.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. You moved in. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was a resident. Let's just say, yeah.
He's got a P.O. box out there somewhere.
Yeah. There's a P.O. box in the middle of the woods there. Yeah. That's what led to my sighting there in 2018.
That area is real well known for sightings, and no doubt about that. But I've been in there with them before. I was in there with them 2 years ago, and we had a lot of activity every night we were there. But it's about 13 miles. It takes us almost a day to get where we go by horseback.
Yeah.
And then by the time we get there, it's dark, and we don't get.
Man, that's the way to do it too, man.
Yeah, I bet you we're right.
Not far from you guys.
So it's probably pretty close. So that's awesome.
Awesome.
But yeah, if I'll keep my eye on that Devil's Den. I went there a couple of years ago, not to a conference, but just the Devil's Den. Beautiful place. So if
I've never been there, but I'm looking forward to going, and I've got quite a few of my friends that are going too, also. So I think it'll be a good time anyway. Maybe be a little cooler that time of year. Won't be quite as hot. But
Yeah.
Hopefully so. Yeah. But yeah, if that's offsetting from that Honubby, then I'll try to make it. So
Yeah,
I
that'd be great.
appreciate it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's 23 miles to where I was at last month. It's a drive.
Okay.
23 hours, excuse me.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. That's what
yeah.
yeah.
23
Pack a
hours.
lunch. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, pack a lunch. Yeah.
Right. Well, heck, buddy. Yeah, we appreciate you coming on, and
man, Darrell, we really do. I really appreciate you coming on, man.
yeah.
No, man, I
Sure, we
appreciate
do.
you having me. I'm honored to be here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Thank
sure.
you, sir.
Well, we'll have you on again, man. Just
All right, man. Sounds good. Let me know.
All right.
Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
you.
All right.
See you, man.
Thank
See
you,
you.
guys.
All right. Whoops. We always do that, man.
I know we always push the
try
button
to-
at the same time. You're going one way, I'm going one way. Yeah. That's because we have no roles. We just kind of.
Dude, I was listening to Tony Merkel this week, and I was listening to Sheriff, Martin Groves, and he was talking about Darrell Denton. I was like, I know this dude. I talked to this dude. I go, why did I not know this? And then I was like, I'm gonna hit up Darrell, and here he is.
Yeah.
There he was.
Awesome.
Wow. And, dude, he just barely, and from what I hear, he just barely touched on stuff that he's seen or experienced.
Yeah.
So
I felt like we could do a 2-part with that guy, easy. So
yeah, that was a good show, man. That was great. That actually had my adrenaline pumping a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he was talking about like seeing it and just it was gritting its teeth, and it was like, get your rag, man.
Yeah. I wanted to ask him about the teeth, and I got sidetracked when we started talking about skin and stuff like that. But
I can picture
if they were squared or if they were canine shape or anything like that.
So this dude he goes out with Sheriff Martin Groves. This he was a sheriff, so naturally police officers and stuff have a high attention to detail. Yeah. So between him and this guy, like I just got 2 different versions of the same story. It's wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Cool.
That's great, man.
Heck yeah.
All right.
Well,
sorry.
I'm looking forward to this weekend.
Me too, man.
Rolling out Friday sometime. I think I'm ready. I think I have everything. I just got to throw it in the truck and roll. So.
Yeah, I've been looking at the map, and I definitely want to hit some Mercer Bayou stomping ground stuff because there's a lot to hit.
All right.
Of course, we'll see all of our good buds.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We'll
have to stop by the Monster Mart. It's
Yeah.
there'll be a few folks there we need to go see. So
yeah, man.
I'm looking forward to it.
Man, I'm excited right now. I'm just pumped up.
It's just you and I, right? Anyone else? Do we know anyone else that's coming?
Oh yeah, dude. I'm gonna bring my 2 young kiddos because they're old enough they can go do their own thing.
Oh, okay.
And they're very interested. And I'm gonna bring my stepdad Mike's coming, man.
Oh, okay, cool. All right.
Yeah, and because he's the one that got me started in all this.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So
it'll be a good time, man.
It'll be a good group of us then. So.
Yeah.
I don't have anyone going with me. So.
We're here for you, Brian.
It's just me.
We're here for you, man.
Yeah. Little man asked
like we give Kendall, man, when we see him.
Yeah. Little man asked me if he could go earlier, but I think his mom's got some plans with him, so he'll have to set this one out. So.
Squatch bait.
Yeah.
He's so adorable. They wouldn't need him though.
He tried to fight him. So.
He'd probably fight him. So you want to play some basketball?
Yeah, try to
basketball or something.
1-on-1. Yeah.
You want to race?
Play him a pig. That's what he'd say. You want to play him a pig?
You want to race me? Yeah.
You can't dunk either. You're too tall. So.
Nah.
I
got to end broadcast, man.
Oh yeah, that's all right.
Hey,
thanks for tuning in, everybody.
See you guys later.
Thanks for putting up.
And I'll see you Friday, buddy.
Yeah, Friday.